So there are 5 senses in the normal human body. Unfortunately, I don't have a sense of smell, which arguably makes me abnormal. My lovely bride here, Colleen, will tell you I'm abnormal in many ways. My warped sense of humor, my love of orderly process, my inability to communicate with words, notwithstanding this story, loss of smell is just one minor abnormality. Be that as it may, this all started with a couple of epic and unusual nosebleeds early in 2010. And I went to an ear, nose, and throat guy, and he diagnosed a tumor growing off of my olfactory nerve. And at the time he said, "You really don't want me operating on this. These are pretty unusual." So he sent me to a specialist at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland.
Specialist was a neurosurgeon. You see, the olfactory nerve's roots grow up into the brain. So Jack required brain surgery to deal with this. On top of that, it was an incredibly rare cancer. Only 1,000 cases have ever been diagnosed. And we have a lot of great hospitals here in Northern Virginia, but we couldn't go to those. We needed to go to Hopkins.
So I had been diagnosed with an esthesioneuroblastoma, which we shortened Esther because, just count the letters in an excellent Scrabble word. There's 21, by the way. And so I was diagnosed in February of that year, and I was scheduled for a surgery in May. Now, I didn't really have time for cancer at that point in my life. I was involved in a major project at work, and we had a product that was due on April 27th. So, in my humble but accurate opinion, it was a slow-growing tumor, and it really didn't matter whether the surgery was scheduled for March, or April, or May, or December. Managing risk. I couldn't leave my team a person short because I was in charge, so it was a bad time. Cancer wasn't really high on my priority list at that time. Managing risk, managing tasks, it's what engineering managers do.
Rare cancer that requires brain surgery. Big project for the Navy. Cancer project. Oh, yeah. So, I was really glad Jack had something to focus on while we waited for May 3rd to arrive, but I threatened to dig the tumor out with a spoon if the date didn't hurry up and get here.
She did threaten that spoon, by the way. And May 3rd eventually arrived, either fast or slow, depending upon your perspective. We checked into the hospital at 5 a.m. I was on the operating room table by 7:30, and I basically went to sleep for 15-hour surgery. I did have brain surgery. The olfactory nerve does go from the sinus up through the brain, into the brain, but they did need to make sure that no cancer cells had packed up into a U-Haul and moved north up into my brain. But all I had to do was sleep for 15 hours. It was easy peasy for me.
Jack told me there really wasn't anything helpful that I could do on the day of his surgery, so he suggested I go to work. That's a totally normal thought process. Totally normal. So, imagine my day as a movie montage. Anxious wife sitting on an uncomfortable chair in a hospital waiting room. Other families are sitting around, but doctors come and talk to them, and then they leave. New families arrive, and after a while, doctors come and talk to them, and they leave. More new families arrive, and after a while, doctors come and talk to them, and they leave. But in the 14 hours between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m., no one ever came to talk to me. Instead, I got only 3 generic secondhand messages that said things like, "The surgery is going according to plan, and they are still collecting specimens." Just how big was this tumor? My nerves were stretched taut, and I was barely holding it together.
So after 14 or 15 hours on the operating room table, I was finally awakened. And at this point in time, I too was barely holding it together. I was miserable. My head hurt. My back hurt from laying on that table. I was cold as all get up, but would they give me a blanket? No, they said your body temperature is too elevated. In my drug-addled state, I didn't really get what they were telling me. I didn't understand it, but even all these years later, I still don't get it.
Around 10 o'clock, surgeon came out to talk to me, and he told me the surgery went very, very well. At 11, I was given 5 minutes to see Jack. He was completely doped up and incoherent, but I didn't care. The surgery was over, it had gone well, and now we could just focus on recovery. That day in the waiting room had been the hardest day of my life. But little did I know, the next day would be even harder.
So when they rolled me out of the operating room into the neonatal intensive care unit, they finally gave me a blanket. They finally gave me a blanket.
Neonatal, those are the infants.
Oh, that was good. Whatever. Intensive care unit. They finally gave me a blanket. And I was very grateful for that. But I wasn't grateful for all the other stuff that was going on in the room. Lights were on 24/7. It was very bright in there. She will tell you otherwise, but it was very bright in there. I had machines that were making all kinds of chirping noises like R2-D2 plugged into me. I had doctors and nurses coming in every 10 minutes. I had brain surgery, so they wanted to make sure that after operating on me that my brain was still working. What's your name? Where are you? What date is this? On and on and on. I gave them the same answers every time, so that was good, but it's kind of annoying. I had gauze shoved up into my sinuses. It was sinus surgery. That meant I could not breathe through my nose, which meant that I was breathing through my mouth. And that meant that I was drying out even more than possible, than I cared to. I couldn't have any water, I couldn't have any food because I still had anesthesia in my system. So they did give me a 1/4 inch water in a little cup with a green sponge on a stick. It looked like a little lollipop. I could dunk the sponge in the water, I could dab my lips, but I was very thirsty. Give me a Coke already. Now, to be fair, I didn't really know this at the time, but after having this brain surgery, I did have an air bubble in there, and I could have had a stroke or a seizure, and I could have died.
Jack might not have known how bad it was at the time, but I certainly did. The doctor showed me the scan of his brain. It was a big oval, and the bottom 2/3 was a gray blob. That was his brain. But above it was a big black swath, and that was the air bubble compressing his brain. And he could have had a seizure, could have gotten brain damage. This was really dangerous, and the doctor told me that if the bubble didn't go down soon, he was going to have to operate again, probably the next day. Now, Jack will tell you that he was in a bright and noisy room, and I believe that in his mind he was. But I will tell you that I was in a cold, dark room where there were very few noises, because if there was any noise at all, Jack would scrunch up his face and moan. And I was wrapped in a hospital blanket, sitting beside his bed, trying not to fidget. Not my gift, I fidget. So I'm sitting there and watching and waiting, and trying not to do anything to disturb him. So all I could do was sit and worry and pray.
So as that first day progressed, was she able to really do anything for me? Not really. Was she able to help the pain in my head? Certainly not. Was she able to help the pain in my back from the 15 or 20,000 pinches I had back there? God knows she tried. She put knuckles, she put elbows in there to the extent that she could, but there wasn't really, it just didn't work. So as we got to the end of the day and she had to be kicked out because visiting hours were limited in ICU, not neonatal, she said, well, what can I do for you? And I didn't really know, and I said, pray for me.
Pray for me? Did my not religious husband just say, pray for me? Does he think he's not going to make it? Is he going to have a seizure tonight? Is the bubble going to cause brain damage? I had been holding it together for months. That was it. The tether snapped on my careful control. When I left that room, I found a nurse and I said, I have been married to Jack for more than 20 years, and he has never, ever said, pray for me. He is not okay. Please take care of him.
Crap. That was not my intent. I just figured prayers never hurt anybody. Clearly, that's not how it was received. So we got into day 2, day 3, day 4 in the ICU. It was more of the same. I was just in pain. It really sucked. I wasn't sleeping. That really sucked. I eventually got to where I was able to eat, but I had no appetite, so that really sucked. And it was all, there were interludes to the MRI machine where they needed to take a look and see whether or not the air bubble was going down. That was just pure fucking torture. They basically brought the EMTs in. They would lift me up. They would put me on the gurney. They would roll that rattle trap down the hallway to another room on another floor in that hospital, take the measurements and send me back and put me back in the bed. And now, to be fair, it was a positive thing as time went on because they learned that the bubble was indeed going down and they would not have to operate again. So that was good.
After about 5 days, Jack was released from the ICU and put in a regular room. And it's funny how a change in circumstances will change your perspective. Because if you had told me a week before that he would spend his days lying motionless in bed with his eyes pinched shut and needing to be coaxed to eat even 5 spoonfuls of soup, and answering questions only when asked, rarely speaking, but would, on occasion, ask a question about life outside the hospital, I would have thought that sounded very bad. But I could see that was actually a huge improvement. He had gotten to that point where he actually cared that there was a life outside the hospital. And so seeing some improvement, seeing some progress, gave me hope. And hope is what we all need. Because hope made me think that in time, things were going to get back to normal, whatever that means with Jack.
So yes, as we got to day 5, I was moved to a regular room. And as we even got to day 6, I was able to actually check out of the hospital. Did I feel very good? No, not really. Still felt like shit. But when they tell you that you're not going to die, they want you to get out of the hospital and go home. So, and that's where we went. And in the grand scheme of things, I went home abnormal without a sense of smell, but I also went home without cancer. And I'm still free to this day. Thank you.